You're listening to Smart Moves with your hosts, Ann Riley Caldwell and Matt Wilson.
Hey, welcome to Smart Moves Podcast. I'm Ann Riley Caldwell, not your ordinary agent, local realtor in the Middle Tennessee area. And I'm here with my co-host, Matt Wilson from New American Funding, branch manager and lender extraordinaire. And today we're going to talk about what's happening in the real estate market as we close out 2025 and what do we anticipate for 2026. And you might want to pay attention because it's going to be a great episode because we had so many tech issues trying to do this. And so Matt and I both have an entertainment background. So we know that when tech issues come up, the show is going to be awesome. So anyway, little fun fact there. But we are here as always to help you make smart, strategic, and smooth moves when it comes to real estate and financing and sometimes life, especially here in Middle Tennessee. So anyway, we're going to read off some stats that have come out from the National Association of Realtors and from Zillow. And we're going to talk about them. And most of these are national stats, but we're going to kind of weave them into what we think is going on here in Middle Tennessee. And also, right after early part of 2026, we're going to come back and do an episode that talks all about what happened in real estate and what we sort of predict in 2026, specifically for Middle Tennessee. So make sure you catch that one also. So we're going to start with the thing that Matt loves to talk about, Fed rate cuts and what they have to do with mortgages. And we have a whole episode on that. So we won't dive too much into that. But the latest information that I have seen that Matt can feedback into is interest rates are not likely to fall below 6% in 2026.
Yes. We'll link in the description or something so that you can see the full deep dive on why the Fed rate doesn't directly impact mortgage rates. But the Fed, it doesn't impact mortgage rates directly. So there we go. We've said it again. That being said, mortgage rates do respond to what the Fed's doing. More importantly, mortgage rates are responding to the things that Fed Chairman Powell is saying more so than what they're actually doing. What I mean there is after they did their rate drop the other day, he went on record to talk about doing quantitative easing, which basically means they're going to start buying treasury bonds again. That should help drive down the price of mortgage rates just a hair. The problem is, I think they're kind of at a point where their goal is to tread water. It's just that they realize that the Fed's job is to basically be the gas or the brakes on the economy. If the economy's slow, they do stuff like lower interest rates to speed it up. And if the economy's too fast, it's called inflation, and they do things to slow it down a little bit or a lot of it. And I think that really we're going to be treading water if their data holds up, and interest rates I don't expect to go tremendously different than where they are right now. Watch the media though, because what you're going to see is a lot of the times you're going to see stuff that says interest rates have dropped, on mortgages too. And maybe they have, but it's always relative to what. If you're out there making plans based on I need interest rates to be at 5% because you got it in your head that that's the magic number, you may be waiting a while, and you need to consider, why is that the magic number? Is it because you want a specific price point that you feel like you can only afford at 5%? If so, cool, consider changing the price point. But it's not, a lot of people I've talked to in recent history, they're waiting on rates to drop. But the problem is they don't exactly know what that means or what they're dropping to. And they'll call me and say the news said they dropped, and they did compared to the week before by, $6 a month for their specific scenario. So if $6 is the difference in you buying a house and not buying a house, you should probably not buy that house, because I promise you $6 of crap is going to happen to you throughout the month. Follow us for more life advice.
There you
go. So anyway, that's where things are going as far as the rate future goes. Obviously, anything can happen, though. I mean, I can't predict the future. If I could, I would go buy $1 billion lottery ticket that's out there right now, and I would retire on that. With that being said, what are you seeing as far as like home sales and inventory and stuff coming up next year?
Well, one of the things for sure is things cooled down in 2025 for multiple reasons. We've got about, I would say in Middle Tennessee, 5 months of inventory at least, which means to sell everything, it's a little over 14,000 units out there in the 9-county area that I consider Middle Tennessee and that most stats are based upon. So that means that on average, a home will take 5 months to actually sell. So obviously, some are faster, some are slower. It all depends. It depends on county. It depends on, whether we're talking townhomes, which are so slow right now, versus single family homes, etc. So that's where I can talk to people specifically about the areas that they're looking in and dig deep into what's really happening. But, things have definitely cooled off this year, but I think the good thing is that we see more of an even market, which we haven't seen probably in a while before this year, maybe a little bit of last year. This year meaning 2025 when we're recording this, because you may not see it till 2026, and 2024, kind of the end of that. So we'll get into a little bit more of that, but that kind of leads us into what Lawrence Yun, who's the NAR chief economist, National Association of Realtors economist, says. For 2026, he predicts a 14% jump in home sales and home prices to be up about 4%. Again, that's nationwide. So later on in another episode, we'll talk more about Middle Tennessee specifically. But, here I would say prices have kind of stalled and are ticking down just a little bit. Again, totally dependent upon area, depending upon inventory. But when things start to sit on the market closer to 5 months, there's definitely more buyer negotiating power. We'll get to another stat coming up. I'll skip to it right now. Zillow said that in October, the typical U.S. listing saw $25,000 in price cuts, matching the largest discounts they have ever recorded. So I would say that that's probably accurate just in general. Their median price point overall nationwide is a little bit less than what you see in Middle Tennessee. But I do see, prices dropping and dropping and dropping. But there's two things with that. One, there is more inventory. So that typically happens. We also are going into the slowest season for real estate seasonally, no matter what. So you see less buyers in the market. And then I think you also see sellers still pricing things sometimes, maybe not like they were 2021, but definitely not like they're 2025. So until sellers figure out that, overpricing your house is not going to get you where you want to go, we're going to see, some price cuts. So that doesn't surprise me. What are you seeing when it comes to what you can see on the finance side?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest indicator for me is always appraisals. A couple of years back, whenever appraisals were coming in low on every property, it was because the thing with an appraisal is an appraisal always looks in the rearview mirror. It's never looking forward. For those that don't know, the appraiser is basically just looking at comparable sales to the property that you're buying or selling. And they're looking over probably the last 3 to 6 months in most cases, assuming they can. Sometimes you got to go further if it's out in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, the whole point of that is, if you buy a car, you can go to Kelley Blue Book because 10,000 cars exactly like your black Ford F-150 have sold in the last several months. But even if you've got exactly the same house across the street from each other, same floor plan and everything, well, what if the one across the street's on the lake and yours is on the interstate? What if that one's wooded and you're a corner lot that's exposed on all directions? It depends. It's all going to impact your marketability. If you're at the front of the neighborhood versus the back of the neighborhood, that's going to change things. So, all that to say, several years ago, I was seeing appraisals come in low, and now I'm actually seeing the opposite. I'm seeing in a lot of cases, like probably my last 3 or 4 in a row, the appraisals come in for 5 figures higher in some cases than what they're getting it for. So, some look at it and they think the sky's falling. I look at that and I see an opportunity there because as things heat back up, here's the thing: Americans are impatient. Those that are waiting on rates to drop or waiting on whatever, they're going to quit waiting eventually. And we're already seeing that. That's pretty much the market that we have now. People realize that, for 2020, 2022, those were the unicorn years. That's never happening again. That's not a real market. I see that we're kind of headed back towards where things were prior to all of the nonsense going on from 2020 on. That's what I see. So it's like, if you want a decent deal on a house, go get you one right now while you can get one for 10,000, 15,000 under appraisal and still maybe get some closing costs paid. I've had, to your point, I've had buyers offer on some homes recently, and it's multiple offer situation they had to win. On the other hand, I've also had buyers go and get 6% in closing costs paid, which they didn't actually need. So we're buying their rate down and to nothing, or relatively speaking, because they were able to get all that paid because the seller was having a hard time selling the house. So it really just depends on where you're at, and which house you're looking at. Obviously, some houses are prettier than others, and that just is what it is.
Yeah, it's so property dependent. But of course, there are things going on in the market that affects things. So I'm going to skip over to, because Matt brought this up, the Greater Nashville Realtors note that we're in our usual seasonal lull, of course, but they also cite, which Matt will be ecstatic about, we might get him to do a backflip. They cite that mortgage applications are up about 15% year over year, hinting that more buyers are getting ready to jump in the market in 2026. And I would say that, I talk to tons of people, everything from window shopping to really seriously looking to buy to contemplating it to tons of people looking to relocate here. And I would say now in December, without me trying hard and just taking incoming inquiries, phone calls, etc., I'm already seeing more people asking me questions and getting ready and thinking about many of them relocating here in 2026. So I would say that in December of 2025 right now, I'm already having more conversations, more phone calls, more thoughts of people thinking about buying right after the first of the year, where I would say traditionally, I don't start really seeing that until probably late February, early March of a year. So just based purely on conversations and what I've seen, I would say that there are a lot of buyers. Again, when we have a slowdown and people live in their house or wherever it is they're living, apartment, too long, they start getting antsy and they start stopping, waiting on interest rates, waiting on other things, and they're just ready to go. So I don't think there's going to be a flood of people, but I do think there will likely be more people in the market right after the first of the year, sooner than usual, and more people in the spring than what we saw in 2025. That's my prediction, just based upon me talking to people all the time.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of the same. For the record, if I did a backflip, would probably need to call an ambulance. But I
That would liven up the show.
yeah, my back's still not right because I got up off a chair the other day. So there we go. But I'm seeing the same thing. Fortunately for the future of my pipeline, I've got a lot of people that say they're going to buy a house and are qualified to buy a house in the spring. Unfortunately for my pipeline tomorrow, like not many of them are buying a house tomorrow. But
we may have one coming.
Maybe one coming. But that's what I'm seeing right now, is just that a lot of people are in that, prep ahead of time. Here's the thing. A lot of these people have probably been prepping for 3 years now, 4 years now, because they've known what they needed to do. Probably they've also realized that rates were going to go down, and then 3 years later, rates haven't gone down in any dramatic fashion. So they're finally like, okay. The visual that I think of is like whenever you go get a nice tall glass of ice water and you get to the bottom of the cup and all the cubes hang back for you, and then at the same time they all fall on your face because you've got it tilted up at you. I think that's probably what the spring market's going to be.
Yeah, this year alone, I had multiple people that I have been talking to for 4+ years that finally pulled the trigger. They finally got their finances together. They finally got over whatever was holding them back. They finally just got to that point where they were ready to do something. So I anticipate seeing even more of that in 2026.
100%. And to that point, like if you're somebody out there that's looking at, I need to get my credit in order or something like that, a lot of people think it takes a lot longer than it actually does. Now, if you've had a foreclosure or bankruptcy, that's a different story. Like there are loans you can do in those situations still. You just need to have a lot of money. But if your situation is just low credit or something, almost always that's something that can be rectified within 6 to 12 months. So like, don't just not do anything about it. Get with me, get with somebody about talking through what your plan should be going forward, to actually make progress on it. Because if you don't know how to fix it and you're in the same spot next year, then you don't get to be one of those people she was just talking about.
Yeah, and what I see from talking to people is when they give me guesstimates and then I send them to Matt, they choose to work with Matt. And sometimes they're actually ready to go right now, or they're going to be ready to go in a month or two. But when they told me the story, they're thinking 6 to 12 months. And I'm like, can you just talk to somebody and find out for sure? Because there's, as we've dealt with and will continue to deal with on this podcast, there's so much misinformation out there, people thinking that they need to do things to clean up their credit. That's not what they need to do, et cetera. So instead of guessing, just call us, because that's why we're here. So the next statistic I see is National Association of Realtors expects new home sales to be up 5% as builders keep adding supply. So I will just say again, this is very localized. There are some places that builders need to stop building because they're not selling. And one of the things that I run into when you look at houses on the market for quote longer, however you want to define that, more than 3 or 4 months, pushing the 5 month plus average, the more new construction that there is in the area that is similar to what you're trying to sell, the harder it becomes to sell yours, unless the builder's so far behind on building that people just want to buy what I call a used house, and go ahead and get into it. Because I see a lot of people that bought houses, I would say between 2022 and 2025. And if the builder is still building in or close to the community, it's really hard to sell those houses because most people want brand new if they can get brand new. So I would just say that also impacts how quickly certain houses sell. And in some areas, we still need supply. And in some areas, I would argue we do not. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah. And to that point with like the new construction, I know a lot of people that bought in new construction neighborhoods, and here they are like 2 or 3 years later and they want to sell their house, and they basically can't because the simple fact is when you buy in one of this is going to be exclusive to the large neighborhoods, large developments that are, several hundred houses from the same builder. When you buy in one of those neighborhoods, it is obviously in their best interest to pump up their comparables that we talked about a few minutes ago so that they can get as much money for the next house as possible, right? So what they're typically doing is they're building in, telling you that they're going to pay for everything in the kitchen sink, $20,000 in closing costs, a stupid low interest rate, buy your mom dinner for Mother's Day or whatever. And then the fact is they're just building it into the price of the house. Well, when you're going to sell the house 2 years later, you haven't received enough appreciation just yet that you've got the ability to sell and also offer somebody to name your child after them and give them pizza for the rest of their life. So, the big thing is historically, I've always told people, if you want to live somewhere for 2 or 3 years, you should probably rent. If you want to live there for 5 to 10 years, then that's buy-in territory. Problem is, over the last couple of years, we've got that a little bit twisted up because of how well things appreciated because of inflation, honestly, for a couple of years. So people are of the expectation that they can buy and 3 years later be sitting on a mountain of equity. All that to say, I would count on a 5 to 7 year plan if you plan to buy a house. That's just over the entire American history, sans 3 years. That's what's made sense. So, it's not to talk anybody out of owning. Obviously, we want everybody to own a house, but do it smartly. Don't go make a decision that's a short-term decision that potentially locks you in over the long haul.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to read sort of three stats together here because I think they all sort of flow into each other. Again, from the latest reports, national-wise, over half of homes, 53%, lost value over the past year, which is the highest share since 2012. So over half of homes lost value over the past year. But only 4% of those homes are valued below their last sale price, which means only 4% don't have equity in them. And just 1.6% are more than 5% under what people paid for them. So most owners are still sitting on big equity gains. And the median home was bought 8.6 years ago, which used to be the average people kept their home was about 7. So now we've seen it go up to 8.6, but they've gained about 67% in value over that 8.6 years. So Matt's the math guy, but I would say what that tells you is almost everybody is sitting on equity. Obviously, the longer you've had your house, you have more equity. I agree with the fact that I feel like that value is going down ever so slowly for some of the reasons that we've already talked about, but you still have almost every owner who's owned their home, probably about the 3 or 4 years that Matt just mentioned, still their home is worth more than what they paid for it. So overall, I would say this shows that buying a home and keeping it for 5+ years, if things go the way they normally go, you should be sitting on equity. And obviously things that ramped up the last few years, there's a lot of people sitting on a lot of equity, which means they have all kinds of options of what to do.
For sure. Well, the first piece there that I'm sure some people gasped when they heard her talk about somebody losing equity if they bought 2 years ago, basically. I visualize that as a roller coaster, if you're going up the hill on the roller coaster, somebody's going to be on the downside and you might still be higher than they are, right? Ultimately, in history, with the exception of the time frame around 2008, if you've held a house for 10 years, you've never lost money, ever. And I believe that the time frame around 2008 was if you did it for 12 instead, you didn't lose money. Matter of fact, my family, for example, purchased a home in 2006. Obviously, it went down in value in 2008. They didn't sell it for quite some time. I want to say they sold it in I can't remember what year they sold it, but they didn't lose money. And that same house sold in 2022 for about double what they originally bought it for. After losing whatever they lost because of 2008 in hypothetical equity. The thing about home equity is this: it's monopoly money until you either sell it or refinance. It is what it is. It's just like, if you got Bitcoin or if you've got Tesla stock or whatever, it's monopoly money until you sell it and turn it back into money. It's going to go up and down a little bit in the micro, but overall it generally goes up. Disclaimer: I don't give financial advice. We're just talking in generalities here. So, I think that just reinforces the idea that long-term is the play, just like everything else. And just like every reasonable financial planner I've ever talked to has said, you can't time the market effectively and beat the market in their world. You can't time and beat the market in this world either in real estate. The biggest benefit you've got in real estate, though, is you can buy a house, and if the market gets better, then you've got the ability to refinance it. So you at least get to get the best of both worlds there. But if the market gets better and it's a refinance market, the odds are your rent's probably going to go up at that same time too if you're still renting.
Well, and that's the thing that people get so focused on equity, which is great because you want your home to go up in value over time. But also on the flip side, people have a tendency to not remember that they would be paying rent somewhere. Yes. And their rent might be as much or more than what their home is. And especially over time, lately, we have seen rent go up astronomically. I mean, as much as 10+% every year, as rentals also, hit a sweet spot and a kind of like a rocket went off at the same time home prices did. So you have to remember that, taxes and insurance will be the primary things that will slightly change your quote mortgage payment, not the principal and the interest that's locked in. But that's usually, I would say, in most areas, unless you live in Davidson County. Okay, whole nother story. For most people, the rent would have gone up more over time also. So you're saving money by paying less rent. You also can paint your walls whatever color you want. You can add on to your house. You can, you have so many freedom options also that, is kind of whatever the credit card thing was, priceless. So you can't really put a price on it. So there's that. So a couple other stats we'll look at here. So again, nationally, sellers, let's see, first-time home buyers are only 21% of the market. I believe the last stat I saw was the average first-time home buyer is between 38 and 42, so about 40 years old now, which is getting higher. The typical repeat buyer is 62 now. And most of them, obviously, if they're moving from one home to another, have strong equity, and about 30% of them pay cash. So I would say, and Matt can talk about what he's seeing in Middle Tennessee. I mean, I still have a lot of first-time home buyers buying things, and I'm going to mix those two together because I had a couple of first-time home buyers this year who were also in their 60s. So they weren't repeat buyers. They were actually first-time home buyers in their 60s. So I get it all. So it's great. I love working with all of them. So anyway, I mean, we're seeing higher ages for a lot of real estate transactions, and we're seeing probably fewer first-time home buyers than what you usually see. But I would say two things. One, there is something to that because incomes may or may not be keeping up with home prices. But I also think, a lot of first-time home buyers don't call and ask questions and realize that there's payment assistance programs and down payment assistance programs and things like that out there. And also, again, what's going on in the market with things average 5 months of inventory, don't realize that they can sometimes get concessions and money that the sellers are contributing to help them pay some of their closing costs and stuff. So by not calling and asking questions, I think we see a lot of people sit on the sidelines.
Yes. I mean, you know what they say about assuming things. So I won't finish that statement, but that's what I've experienced a lot too, is that people will assume that they know what's going on because they talk to, Uncle Joe at the family barbecue or at Thanksgiving or something, and Uncle Joe knows what's up in his wife beater shirt and stained khaki shorts or whatever. New Balances, probably, if I had to guess. Anyway, no offense to the New Balance wearers out there. I hear those are back in style and no longer dad shoes. Which leads me to a whole other tangent. Why is it that children these days, the Gen Zers, why are they dressing like my dad did back in the day? He's so old, he's out of style and back in again. Anyway, back to the show. The the big thing for me with all of that stuff that you just mentioned is that I hate to see that the first time home buyer is getting to be that age. It's harder to establish a family if you don't own a home. And I think part of it is absolutely affordability because you're right. Income has not increased as quickly as the price of everything has. I think also it's an education gap though, where we've got people that are out here not knowing what they need to do to get qualified and not seeking out the help to get there along the way either. To your point, though, people thinking the market's going to crash or something like that. I think it's wishful thinking because 30% of buyers paid cash. Well, if a third of the market's paying cash, and then there's also trillions of dollars of equity sitting there, and you've got a bunch of people that are retired or close to retirement with a 3% interest rate and not interested in losing it, they're not going to sell their house, whether or not it's too big for them or not at this point, whether or not everybody's moved out and gone to college or not at this point. So, I think that I hope that over the next year or two, we see that number come back down a lot because it was 33 just like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, that would be great. And the earlier you get in, the more opportunity you have to build up equity and again stop throwing away money on rent. So it's at least worth a conversation and seeing what's out there, and also being realistic and not thinking that you can just jump in and have your dream home at the very beginning. But we have tons of people that plan ahead. We've done episodes on this too, giving us a time frame of how long you think you want to be in that house. Do you want to turn it into an investment property one day, potentially? Do you want to use your equity and even, and as your income continues to go up, move into the home that is closer to your dream home? So lots of conversations to be had with that, don't just say, no, I'm not going to do this without really thinking through and having conversations is what I would say. There's so much more exciting stuff here, but I'm going to do a couple of quick things and then we'll wrap it up for you guys and then tune into the next episode because we've got a few more that we're going to throw out there. So 52% of buyers start by calling an agent, not just going on the internet. And of course, some of them go on the internet. and scroll around, but also some of them call lenders directly. But I would say most of my people call me first. And so it's great because I can ask them preliminary questions because I do talk to Matt all the time and all the things I've learned from all the deals that I've seen go well and not go well. I can get a lot of valuable information from people that I can tell them, okay, when you talk to the lender, these are the things you told me that you need to tell him. Because sometimes I think people are more willing to talk to me as an agent than they are to tell the lender all their stuff up front. So I can just encourage them and kind of set the stage for them to do that. It says here that overall 55% got pre-approved early, and they therefore got more accepted offers. So I don't know how they define early, but I mean, I can just tell you here in Middle Tennessee, for the most part, if you're not pre-approved, no seller is going to take your offer seriously. So there's really no reason to go look at a bunch of houses and think you're going to make an offer on something if you haven't gotten to the point of being pre-approved. So, it gives us a lot of time to work on strategy. It gives us a lot of time to compare houses in different areas based upon price point because it's so completely different from one part of Middle Tennessee to another. So I think all of that again goes towards, just pick up the phone and let's have a conversation.
Yes, absolutely. And, to your point, as far as people being scared of the lender, I mean, we don't bite or anything. We're here to help. I think that there's a big misnomer out there. There's a misconception that with lending, if we tell you no, that you can't do something today, that means no forever and I hate you. And that's not what that means at all. As a matter of fact, it'd be really cool and a lot easier in my job if I could just tell everybody yes. I do not like to tell people no. It sucks. My children would probably say otherwise, but professionally, I do not like to tell people no. The big thing is this. First off, if you go talk to a real estate agent and you have not been pre-approved, and I'll say this, your pre-approval means that you've actually shown income and asset documentation to whoever pre-approved you. But if your agent's like, yes, let's go look at houses, I would strongly recommend that you find a new agent too, because that agent's super hungry and doesn't have your best interest in mind with actually getting you qualified to shop. Some people might take offense to that, but it just kind of is what it is. Like if you're out there looking for houses and you don't have a pre-approval letter in hand and you're not capable of writing a check in cash for exactly the amount that's there, you're kind of wasting the time of the people that you just kicked out of their house for an hour so you can go nose around their closet, right? It's kind of inconsiderate. So keep that in mind, as well as, the 55% that are getting pre-approved ahead of time. That's putting them in that strong position to be able to go ahead and know for sure what they're able to do. That also allows them to, like you said, you get more accepted offers. Me looking at the way the stats written, I kind of feel like they're saying that like 45% of people are writing offers without even having a pre-approval letter, which is pretty wild because I don't see that happen. But to be fair, I hear stories all the time about, and sometimes have to save stories where people have gone and got a contract and they never even graced the phone line of any lender anywhere. So, yeah, if you're a seller,
I would say I see that more in new construction because new construction agents love to get contracts written and then hope for the best later on. So I would say personally, the used home people, they're not going to get excited and take a contract and start moving out of their house and buying another house without knowing how strong as best they can. And definitely that somebody has at least talked to a lender and gotten some type of letter from somebody. And also watch our podcast episodes on not every letter is the same. But with that said, I would say the one exception that I see is new construction. A lot of times they're more than happy to write up a contract and hope for the best.
I could see that. I had a situation not long ago where I talked to a family and that exact thing happened. They were kind of talking to me because they wanted me to decline them because they were one of these that owned a house for 2 or 3 years, not long enough to have any meaningful equity. And they would have to sell their house for an astronomical price for it to even work, for them to even get into the other place. But because they had a sweet talking real estate agent whenever they got there and they didn't have their own agent with them, they wound up with a contract and they realized soon thereafter that it's not going to happen. Like Could it happen? Yeah, I could say that any house is worth $1 million to be sold, and we got hypothetical money to put down. But until it actually sells, you ain't got nothing. It's not going to work. I don't know. You may know better than me, but I assume the reasons they do that is just to create some artificial numbers for themselves and to keep pressure on the buyers that are coming in to say all the others are under contract or something. Is that what the deal is?
Yeah, I would say it's one, they're hoping that the deal goes through because they don't want to watch somebody walk out the door that maybe could have gotten, approved. So they don't want to lose them while they're there to the competition or, whatever. And then also, it definitely helps when you can say that homes are under contract in the neighborhood. And the hardest one is the first one. So especially if it's the first one, they're overly eager to be able to say that it's under contract. So, and if it comes back on the market, it comes back on the market. Like nobody's paying that much attention. And you just say, oh, well, the buyers weren't qualified after all. It's not because the home isn't well built. You know what I mean? So it's psychological. It's not losing a potential client. It's hoping for the best and knowing worst case, you have to try to get somebody else to buy it a week or two from now.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. I could see that. My grandfather bought one that was a fallout like that. It just worked out that somebody else had not qualified for whatever reason. And there he was ready to buy a house at the same time. So there you go.
There you go.
That's another thing that I've seen with builder lending in a lot of cases is that they've got more restrictive guidelines than what you can actually get away with normal loans. And then also they don't always do the best job vetting everything out because they don't really care because, like you said, there's always somebody else willing to buy that house in most cases.
Well, many times the builders are using lenders that are owned by the same parent company, which creates a lot of conflicts. And many times, in my experience, they're more paper pushers. They don't necessarily have the experience to help people fix their credit, to come up with, oh, well, if you come up with money and pay off your car payment, you no longer have a debt to income ratio problem. Like there's a lot of things that Matt and other lenders out there that are experienced can look at and find ways to make things work. That if all you're doing is just looking at it at face value and you're not trying to be creative in a good way, not creative in a bad way, and find ways, because a lot of times people have aunts, uncles, parents that are willing to pay their car off or to help them do something, that is okay within, guidelines and lender requirements and things like that. And most of the time, I think it's just a rubber stamp, yes or no. I mean, either what you show me is going to work or what you show me is not going to work. And we're just going to move on and try to find another buyer. So, depending upon what you're told by one lender, there might be another lender out there that can actually get a deal done for you. So anyway, watch one of our podcasts where we talk about lender overlays. So anyway, hope you enjoyed that. We went a little long, but there were so many stats and we've got more. So we're going to have to do another episode. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it. We are here always to help you make smart and strategic and smooth moves when it comes to real estate, finance, and sometimes life. So make sure you watch all the other episodes where we talk about exciting topics, and we really appreciate you watching. I'm Ann Riley Caldwell, not your ordinary agent here in Middle Tennessee, with my co-host Matt Wilson, New American Funding, and we are here to have conversations with you to help you make smart moves.